إن لحظة الاحتفال قريبة.
Hamas's military wing threatens further attacks against Tel Aviv's international airport and announces the end of truce talks. Israeli attacks on Gaza kill at least 20 people, including the wife and child of a Hamas military commander. The U.S. president vows to continue fighting Islamic State militants in Iraq after the group beheaded an American journalist. And hundreds of thousands of Yemenis continue to rally in the capital Sana'a for the third straight day, demanding the government's ouster. Good evening and welcome to Al World News. I'm Mariam Khattar. Hamas's military wing, the Izz ad-Din Qassam Brigades, pledged to continue its fight against the Israeli aggression targeting the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. The group's spokesperson announced plans to target Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion International Airport on Thursday. He also called on Palestinian negotiators to leave the Egyptian capital Cairo and end indirect negotiations with the Israelis.
قد ضيع فرصة ذهبية.
Following long weeks of absurd negotiations and after the enemy's crimes, we say that this initiative was stillborn, and today it was buried with the martyr of Ali Muhammad Daif. That is why the Palestinian negotiating team should leave Cairo never to return. There will be no going back to that track, and we are not bound to such a path. We warn international airlines to stop flying into Ben Gurion Airport starting from 6 a.m. on Thursday. Mass gatherings of the Israeli public in areas where rockets of the Qassam brigades can reach, especially in open fields, are prohibited.
Well, in a failed assassination attempt, the Israelis killed the wife and child of Hamas's military chief, Mohammad Deif, in Gaza. Israeli warplanes targeted the house of Deif, the head of the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, injuring 45 people. Israeli officials claimed they had information that the resistance fighter was at his home in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood when the cabinet-backed operation was carried out. In response, Hamas said the Israeli entity will pay for its crimes against Palestinians, as it confirmed that the military chief is still alive and calling the shots in the fight against the Israelis. Thousands of Gazans, meanwhile, mourned the killing of Deif's family members as they marched in their funeral procession. Meanwhile, Palestinian resistance factions are continuing to respond forcefully to those Israeli attacks. Barrages of rockets were fired at Israeli settlements, including Ashkelon, Eshkol, Beersheva, and Tel Aviv. Code red sirens resonated across the Israeli entity as more than 200 rockets targeted Zionist settlements since Tuesday, hitting military bases and a gas station located off the Gaza coast. There were reports of damage, but so far, no injuries have been confirmed. All this comes after Israeli occupation forces resumed their deadly attacks in the Gaza Strip following the expiration of a one-day ceasefire extension. At least 24 Palestinians were killed and more than 120 injured in Israeli strikes, including women and children, and dozens of others were also injured. The latest attack claimed the lives of 2 boys in Deir el-Balah in central Gaza. Earlier, 7 members of the same family were killed as several raids pounded Deir el-Balah, Rafah, and east of Gaza City, among other locations across the Strip. This brings the death toll from the Israeli offensive against Gaza to more than 2,041, as the number of injured Palestinians exceeded 10,300. Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Zionist operation in Gaza will last as long as it takes to restore Tel Aviv's so-called security needs. In a televised address, the Israeli premier said that Operation Protective Edge is not over and that Hamas has been given the harshest blow since its creation. Netanyahu also claimed that the truce failed because there was no guarantee that the Palestinian resistance would be disarmed. Our Gaza correspondent Belsam El Atrash is with us over the phone now to give us an update. Belsam, Last time we spoke, you did tell us that Hamas was to wage a fierce war on the Israelis starting tonight. What's the latest you're hearing on that?
Yes, true. There has been rockets fired by the Palestinian resistance groups towards the southern Israeli settlements after an hour, maybe, when the last statement was released by Abu Ubaidah. A barrage of rockets has been fired towards Israeli settlements throughout the day, and also especially after the statement, there was a number of rockets fired towards the Israeli settlements, led to material damage, while sirens sounded in these settlements, Mitivot, Ashkelon. Even one of the rockets today had fell in Haifa. The Abu Ubaidah statement stated clearly for the Israelis to go to the shelters, indicating that they will pound the Israeli settlements and the Israeli cities with a large number of rockets. So far, the density of the rockets being fired by the Palestinian has not risen yet, but the night is still in the beginning, and still the Palestinian resistance group said that they will begin pounding Ben Gurion airport at 6 a.m. this morning, and that the war has not begun on the Israeli side. On the other hand, the Israeli airstrikes and air raids are continuing, but with a rate less than today and yesterday's rate. The Israeli airstrikes are still being carried out across the Gaza Strip, but and so far it has been calm, relatively calm. The last death was the two boys in Deir el-Balah, which was about 4 to 5 hours ago. Since that moment, and since Netanyahu's speech and Abu Ubaidah's speech, no aggressive or no massive attack had occurred yet.
So, Bassem, what measures are being taken to ensure that Palestinians are safe from that promised barrage of rockets on Tel Aviv's international airport?
Well, Palestinians here in Gaza basically have no shelter. So the Israeli air raids that are being carried out by the Israeli warplanes are hitting civilians and targeting everywhere. So basically, the past 44 days of the aggression, today is the 45th day, and it occurs again. So the state for the Palestinian is similar. But on the other hand, for the Israeli side, this, after Abu Ubaidah's statement, the situation or the equation today is different. The Palestinians today had notified the Israelis to stay in their shelters and that they are going to hit them, which indicates that there might, if the Palestinian factions actually hit Ben Gurion Airport, this might mean that the aggression that will be carried out by the Israeli warplanes and the Israeli troops will be severe, heavy, and will destroy and kill a lot of Palestinians. So here in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians are actually hoping that this night will pass safely and that the Israelis will not commit any aggressive attacks on them if the Palestinian factions if the Palestinian factions keep to their word and start targeting targets in the Israeli side, such as Ben Gurion Airport.
Well, Bassem, do talk to us a little bit more about Hamas's military capabilities. How prepared are the Palestinian resistance groups to retaliate against the Israelis?
Palestinian resistance groups are well prepared, actually. They have been announcing that they have special kinds of rockets and missiles that they have not fired before against the Israeli side. We have been in this war, they have been in this war for 45 days now, and they are still keeping a sort or a kind of weapon in reserve for situations such as the similar situation that we're facing now, which was the failure of negotiation and the returning back to point zero, and Netanyahu stating that they will continue their offensive against Gaza until Hamas is disarmed or until destroying Hamas. So they actually said that they do have weapons and new rockets. That is one thing. The other thing that they had released was a new rifle or a sniper that can shoot or kill from a 2-kilometer range, which is something rare and new for the Palestinian resistance, and says that they do have sophisticated weapons and that they are well prepared. The ground invasion that had occurred around 20 days ago also was a proof that the Palestinian resistance groups are good in the battlefield and that they are well prepared for any sort of attack carried out by the Israeli side. Here, the Palestinian resistance group in the past 10 days took advantage of the ceasefires that had occurred and prepared themselves for the possibility that they will resume their fight against the Israeli side, and that the war might occur again and the negotiations might fail. So they prepared themselves with the military equipment and rockets that they need to continue their retaliation and resistance against the Israeli side until at least their conditions are met.
All right, well, it does sound as though they are pretty well equipped to respond. So that is Balsam Al-Atrash, our Gaza correspondent. Thank you very much for those updates. Palestinians displaced by the Israeli aggression against Gaza have voiced their disappointment at the collapse of the ceasefire negotiations in Egypt as they bear the brunt of the Zionist atrocities.
It's a UN school serving as a shelter in the Gaza Strip. You can sense the homesickness. For 45 days, these Palestinians have been forced to stay at this shelter for fear of being attacked by the Israelis. When and if they go back to their homes, they may not even find them in one piece.
The Israeli escalation is very difficult, and the life that we are living is even harder because our life now is not real living. We left our homes and everything we own in order to come to the school here. Life in the school is disgusting. It lacks everything.
Displaced by the Israeli offensive against the Gaza Strip, many Palestinians have been disappointed by the collapse of ceasefire talks between the warring sides, which broke the silence of a 10-day calm.
We can't reach our own homes. One day there is a truce and one day there is not. What kind of life is this? We want a permanent ceasefire and live our life the way we want, like the rest of the world. We want to live like everyone else. We are humans.
We were happy last night when we heard that there was a truce and we thought that we could go home, but then the war started again. What are we going to do? Are we supposed to live through another destructive war? As Israeli and Palestinian negotiators moved back and forth from and to Egypt, where talks proved to be futile, the silence was shattered in Gaza by the sound of bombardment. Now the fate of these displaced Palestinians hangs in the balance.
A suicide car bombing killed at least 13 people and wounded 33 others in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. The bomber detonated his explosives close to a busy market in the Al-Talbiya neighborhood in the eastern part of the capital. No group has claimed responsibility, but militants loyal to the so-called Islamic State have taken credit in the past for coordinated bombing campaigns across Baghdad. Iraqi Kurdish ministers who suspended their participation in the government of outgoing Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki have rejoined the administration. Iraq's outgoing Foreign Minister Hoshyar Zebari, who is a Kurd himself, said on Wednesday that he, along with other Kurdish ministers, have returned to Baghdad. The almost 3-month-old dispute came after Maliki infuriated Kurdish leaders by accusing them of harboring terrorists after Islamic State militants swept through northern Iraq in June. Well, Islamic State militants have posted a video purportedly showing the beheading of U.S. journalist James Foley, who was captured in Syria back in 2012. The move is seen as the first retaliatory measure to U.S. airstrikes against militant positions in Iraq.
In the first act of direct retaliation against Washington's latest air campaign in Iraq, the notorious Islamic State militant group released a video of the beheading of an American journalist.
This is James Wright Foley, an American citizen of your country. As a government, you have been at the forefront of the aggression towards the Islamic State. You have plotted against us and gone far out of your way to find reasons to interfere in our affairs. Today, your military air force is attacking us daily in Iraq.
In a nearly 5-minute video titled A Message to America, IS declared that US correspondent James Foley was killed due to US President Barack Obama's ordered airstrikes in northern Iraq.
I call him my brother John, who was a member of the US Air Force.
Ironically, Foley, who was captured in Syria back in 2012, was seen kneeling on the ground, wearing the same orange outfit worn by prisoners held at the US naval base at Guantanamo Bay. The White House was quick to save face over the killing of one of its nationals. Taking a break from his summer vacation, President Obama called for a joint effort to eliminate the cancer of the so-called Islamic State.
From governments and peoples across the Middle East, there has to be a common effort to extract this cancer so that it does not spread. There has to be a clear rejection of these kind of nihilistic ideologies. One thing we can all agree on is that a group like ISIL has no place in the 21st century.
Oddly enough, he was beheaded by a black-clad masked militant who speaks English with a British accent. This has put the UK in a very awkward position with its American ally due to the large number of British nationals recently joining the ranks of the Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria.
Now, we have not identified the individual responsible on the video, but from what we've seen, it looks increasingly likely that it is a British citizen. Now, this is deeply shocking, but we know that far too many British citizens have travelled to Iraq and travelled to Syria to take part in extremism and violence. And what we must do is redouble all our efforts to stop people going, to take away the passports of those contemplating travel, to arrest and prosecute those that take part in this extremism and violence, to take extremist material off the internet, and do everything we can to keep our people safe.
IS has threatened to kill Steven Sotloff, another American journalist who was kidnapped last year. But it seems the killing of the American journalist has not deterred Washington's military campaign in Iraq. The State Department has requested an additional 300 US troops to the war-torn country. Meanwhile, the US carried out a total of 14 more airstrikes on militant positions in northern Iraq in the past 24 hours. Although militants have been carrying out such atrocities on a mass scale against residents in both Iraq and Syria, this latest killing will likely set off alarm bells in the West.
Let's cross over to our Baghdad correspondent Mustafa Kattan for more on these developments. Mustafa, how close is the Iraqi army to the central city of Tikrit?
Yes, actually, there is a confirmed report that the Iraqi army is very close to totally secure the city of Tikrit, especially after that the Iraqi army yesterday controlled utterly on the 4 entrances of the city of Tikrit, and also there is several military operations between the Iraqi army is launched with the support of the Iraqi volunteers to push the militants out of the city of Samarra. Most of the military operations concentrated in the east and in the northeast of the city of Samarra, also in Djil, and also concentrated in the city of Tikrit. Now the Iraqi army is advancing from Tikrit towards Hawija, which is located in Kirkuk province, without any American support, and that is actually could be a positive point, according to security experts who said that the Iraqi army is advancing without any support from the United States Air Force. And simultaneously, the Kurdish forces are now getting momentum and they are advancing now after they captured the Mosul dam, and now they are planning to launch another attack to recapture the cities and the villages that have been fallen into the hands of the IS militants. The major point is that, Miriam, that the city of Amalli now has besieged for more than 70 days. And today in the parliament, in the Iraqi parliament, MPs and representatives of the Turkmen sect in Iraq, they urge the international community and the regional countries, and also they urge the Iraqi army to try to do whatever it can to open the siege, because the people in Amarli city actually are fighting with just with a few ammunition and very light weapons and some machine guns, and actually now they are suffering from lack of water, medicine, and electricity and other basic needs. So it could be another catastrophic situation in Amarli, and these representatives have called on all Iraqis to join hands in order to avoid any other atrocity or tragedy situation in Amarli and any other city in Iraq. Yes, Mariam.
So, Mustafa, talk to us a little bit more about the measures being taken to prevent the militants from entering Baghdad.
Well, actually, there is a heavy presence of the Iraqi security forces, the police, and also the Iraqi army, and also the Iraqi special forces. And the Iraqi army now is securing the entrances of Baghdad from the south, especially in Dora city, and also in Abu Ghraib, which is very near to Fallujah city. The Iraqi helicopters and the Iraqi Air Force is patrolling the skies 24 hours a day in order to prevent any potential attack that might be launched on the civilians in Iraq, or in order to destabilize the security situation in Baghdad. So the Iraqi army and with cooperation with the intelligence, actually they are chasing and trying to besiege the militants, especially in some dangerous and critical areas and districts in Baghdad. And the Iraqi army is trying to prevent any attacks like this. But the militants actually, in one way or another, they are managed to launch attacks with booby trap cars and to target busy markets and other civilian crowded places. Yes.
All right, that is Mustafa Kattan, our correspondent reporting from Baghdad. We do appreciate those updates. Thanks a lot. Sabah Jawad, a London-based political analyst, joins us now for more perspective. Mr. Jawad, now that the KRG has officially returned to Baghdad, what political role can we expect the Kurds to have under the new prime minister?
Well, they will be hoping actually to achieve quite a lot, actually, to at least to the restorations of their presence in Baghdad and the government. They'll be talking about the foreign ministries as well, whether Zibari is back as a foreign secretary of Iraq. There are huge oppositions to such event is taking place in Iraq. By a lot of people. A lot of people think that the foreign secretary post should be given to an Arab. They are the majority of people in Iraq. And also the president. We had this situation before as well. There are a lot of questions mark regarding Hoshar Zibari of becoming a foreign secretary, because a lot of people accuse him of representing the region of Kurdistan rather than the Iraq as a whole, and his loyalty actually to his relatives and his party, which is a democratic party of Kurdistan. The Kurdish nationalists did not, since the occupation of Iraq took place in 2003, they ally themselves very strongly with the American occupation, and they represent the voice of the occupation in Iraq. They offer the occupation permanent military base when the Iraqi government under al-Maliki was negotiating their departure from Iraq in 2011. So
and,
a lot of people think
Mr.
that
Jawad,
that
I just want to get your thoughts on this. Is this perhaps a turning point in Premier-designate Haider al-Abadi's challenge of bridging the divide between the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds?
Well, I think Abadi actually, the way he came to power and he was chosen by the American, and basically Nouri al-Maliki was ousted from power by the Americans in alliance with the Kurds and some political parties in Iraq. There is a lot of people, these people are very unhappy about al-Maliki conduct in the past few years, including not giving immunity to the American forces in Iraq after 2011. He refused to have an advisors in Iraq with immunities. He kicked a lot of fuss about the Americans not adhering to the security agreement with Iraq and to the framework agreement which was signed in 2007. The United States did not supply Iraq with the necessary arms and airplanes which al-Maliki thought that Iraq needed to fight terrorism, and helicopters as well. Therefore, he went to Russia to buy arms from Russia and so on. And he also started talking about the majority rule in Iraq, majority political rule in Iraq, which actually break the system that the American imposed in Iraq to maintain Iraq as a weak and fragmented state, where small political forces could have a huge influence which far exceeds their weight in popular support as well. You know, like the Kurds, which represent the maximum 12% of the Iraqi populations, but they have a huge influence on the political scenes in Iraq in terms of having the presidency of Iraq. They have the vice premiers and the deputy speaker of parliament, as well as a number of key ministries in the Iraqi government.
So based on everything
over the political scenes far exceed their.
Based on everything that you are telling us, Mr. Jawad, what will this unity that Abadi seems to be putting together mean for the country's fight against IS militants?
Well, I mean, you know, to fight terrorism and to fight Daesh, to fight ISIS in Mosul and elsewhere, you need a united front. And I think Abadi is like al-Maliki, doesn't have a united front to fight these terrorist groups. And in fact, they don't even have serious efforts by the Americans, because the Americans, they get very upset, like the British, they get very upset as one of their citizens is executed in Syria or Iraq by ISIS, but they soon forget it, and they don't seem to mind when the Iraqis and the Syrians and the Lebanese and people in the Middle East are slaughtered by the ISIS terrorist groups as well. These been going on for years now in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Libya. And in fact, the United States and its Western allies and the parties who support them in the Middle East did not lift a finger in trying to stop the atrocities committed by ISIS. In fact, the strongest United States allies in the area, like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, are very good friends of the United States, and they're supported to the hilt by the United States in whatever they do. They finance groups like Daesh, and don't forget, Daesh ideology derived from the Saudi school of thought, if you like, you know, Takfiri Wahhabi ideology, which been installed in so many children and youths, and not only in the Arab world, but also in the Islamic world. And you see the mosque which teaches such terrorist ideology on all over the world, in Pakistan and Afghanistan, even in some Western capitals as well. We've seen this kind of things happening in London as well. You know, the spreading of the jihadi, so-called Salafi jihadi ideology spread by the Saudi Arabia and the billions of dollars spent by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and so on. So if you talk about fighting ISIS, you have to be serious about it and not use ISIS to topple the regime in Syria or to topple, use it as a political football against other people in the Middle East who are not obedient to the American policies as well. So there is, it has to be a serious effort by everyone to fight terrorism, because this terrorism is coming to bite you sooner or later, as the West has been discovering quite recently.
And they do seem to be discovering that more and more by the day. Mr. Sabah Jawad, a London-based political analyst, we do appreciate getting your thoughts on that. Thank you. Do stay with us here. Here's a look at what's coming up. Pakistani opposition threatens to invade red zone if Prime Minister refuses to quit. Welcome back to Bulletin, our top stories this hour.
لأن لحظة الاحتفال قريبة.
Hamas's military wing threatens further attacks against Tel Aviv's international airport and announces the end of truce talks. Israeli attacks on Gaza kill at least 20 people, including the wife and child of a Hamas military commander. U.S. President vows to continue fighting Islamic State militants in Iraq after the group beheaded an American journalist. And hundreds of thousands of Yemenis continue to rally in the capital Sana'a for the third straight day, demanding the government's ouster. Hundreds of thousands of Yemenis have once again filled the streets of the capital Sana'a as they continue their revolutionary movement to topple the government of Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi. The calls come after Sayyid Abd al-Malik al-Houthi demanded the ouster of the government for failing the people. Our correspondent Muhammad al-Attab has the details.
Mass rallies have brought life to a standstill for the third day in the Yemeni capital Sana'a. This latest rally is called for by Houthi leader Sayyid Abd al-Malik al-Houthi on Sunday, have seen hundreds of thousands flooding the streets. One of the demands, along with the reinstating fuel subsidies and fighting corruption, is the removal of President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's government, which has failed to live up to the expectations of the public, following the 2012 ouster of the long-time dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh.
These crowds of people in the capital Sana'a have gathered here against the lethal hikes in fuel prices, which really have killed the people. We want the implementation of a national dialogue and for the change of this corrupt government with a technocratic cabinet.
The decision of raising the fuel prices which was taken by the government is rejected by all Yemenis, as it doesn't reflect the aspirations and demands of the people for a better life and prosperous Yemen.
Abd al-Malik al-Houthi has given President Hadi until Friday to meet the protesters' grievances. Otherwise, the Houthi leader warned additional forms of legitimate action will follow, and it appears protesters are ready for an escalation.
The government and the president himself have become illegitimate. This is according to the principles of the initiative brokered by Gulf states, as it stipulates the presidency term of Hadi ends by 2014, as he was elected for 2 years in 2012. And that also applies for the government.
Fearing a similar fate to his predecessor, Hadi has called for dialogue with the Houthis, with the aim of establishing a national unity government An envoy has been sent to Saada to meet with the Sayyid Abdul Malik, but it is unlikely that anything tangible will come out of this meeting, with the Friday deadline fast approaching, which will only increase the tension already gripping the Arab world's most impoverished country.
While the Yemeni government continues to ignore the people's call for change, the protesters here appear as determined as ever to carry on with their demonstrations until all of their demands are met. Muhammad Al-Attab, AEE TV, Sana'a.
Well, Muhammad spoke to us earlier and he said that the protest movement is driven by more than just economic grievances.
Such a decision by the government to cut the fuel subsidies have really sparked a revolution. Most of the people are dismayed by this decision which was issued during the holiday of the Eid al-Fitr, which was really, the people were happy because of the Eid, but this kind of decision has really made them sad. And when the Houthi called for the demonstrations, most of the people have welcomed such call, and they have now participated in this uprising against the government. So far the Yemeni president has called today for most of the Yemeni people to make a coalition, and he has sent a delegation to the Houthi leader, Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi, in order to discuss with him how to resolve this outstanding and this really it has become one of the biggest problems that the Yemeni president is facing. So the upcoming meeting with the Houthi leader will shape out the future of this revolution. Most of the political observers here in Yemen are expecting that the Houthi will stand beside the peoples of Yemen. In spite of that, the government is trying to seduce the Houthi group with ministerial posts, and they are trying to allow them with different political gains, but most of the political observers and also the group itself is saying that they are standing beside the Yemeni people, and that they are against this cut of the fuel subsidies, and that they are calling also for the formation of the Yemeni government to be replaced by a cabinet of technocrats. So most of these demands are unanimously, most of the Yemeni people unanimously agree on them.
Pakistani protesters woke up optimistic of their chances of ousting Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif today, one day after they forced their way through barricades to reach the gates of Parliament, as a Wednesday evening ultimatum by a leading protest leader draws closer.
Men, women and children of all ages staged a sit-in outside Pakistan's Parliament building after defying a government ban on entering Islamabad's Red Zone, which houses key buildings including the official residences of the Prime Minister and the President, as well as foreign embassies. The protests have been led by former international cricketer Imran Khan, turned politician and head of the country's third largest political party, and cleric Tahir al-Qadri, who controls a network of Islamic schools and charities. They say last year's general election was rigged and have piled pressure on the government, starting with 2-day-long marches from the eastern city of Lahore to Islamabad, where they have held 5 days of rallies. The government had banned them from the Red Zone, but Khan and Qadri defied the call, and soon after midnight on Tuesday, thousands of their supporters entered the high-security area, using cranes to remove shipping containers put in place to seal off the area.
We have been continuously traveling since August 8. We think that our efforts have been successful, thank God. The morning that has dawned today will prove to be good for the whole Pakistani nation. It will also have good impact internationally.
The unexpected late-night intervention from the military, which is highly influential in Pakistan, came after Khan issued an ultimatum demanding Sharif resign by Wednesday evening. Qadri, however, distanced himself from Khan's call, saying his supporters would maintain a peaceful sit-in until Sharif resigned.
The sun of freedom has not risen yet. This is just the beginning of the journey towards the objective people are out to achieve. God willing, the people will only go back after making the sun of freedom rise.
The protests have mounted extra pressure on the 15-month-old government as it struggles to overcome high employment, daily power cuts, and a Taliban insurgency. The showdown has also raised broader questions over the stability of Pakistan, a nuclear-armed nation of 180 million people.
Racial tensions in the U.S. state of Missouri were stoked again when police killed another African-American man, as authorities struggle to quell the nightly confrontations over the shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white policeman in Ferguson last week.
Angry residents of a black neighborhood in U.S. county of St. Louis, not far from the riot-struck town of Ferguson, accused police of excessive force after two police officers fired several bullets at a 23-year-old knife-wielding man who was behaving erratically. Authorities in Ferguson had earlier issued a plea for nighttime quiet and reconciliation after another night of gunfire, tear gas, and chaos, 10 days after the shooting of an unarmed African-American Michael Brown by a white police officer. In the hours after darkness fell, protesters were notably fewer in number and more subdued than on previous nights as they avoided confrontation with the police. But tensions were never far below the surface. Helmeted officers, some with heavy weapons and dogs, suddenly emerged in force, arresting dozens of demonstrators.
As of 1 a.m., there were 47 arrests tonight, and early this morning compared to 31 at the same time yesterday. I will add that one of the arrestees was an out-of-state violator who we've arrested for the third time. I also think that over the past 10 days, the men and women of law enforcement and the people of Ferguson have gotten to know better and to understand one another.
With the president sending his justice secretary to Ferguson today, authorities didn't want scenes of violence on the eve of his arrival, but the anger unleashed by Michael Brown's killing is showing no signs of letting up.
At least 36 people, including several children, were killed in Japan following landslides triggered by torrential rains on the outskirts of the western city of Hiroshima. 7 people are still missing. The landslides came after a month's worth of rain fell in one night, loosening slopes already saturated by heavy downpours over the past few weeks. A UK-based biotech firm is developing a new weapon to kill off the dengue virus. Researchers in Brazil are producing millions of male mosquitoes genetically modified with a gene that kills off their offspring. The plan is to release the GM males into the wild, where they will mate with females who will give birth to mosquitoes that carry a gene that kills them before they reach maturity.
For humans, these are the deadliest creatures on Earth. Mosquito-borne illnesses kill more people each year than all other animals combined. And dengue fever, which affects tens of millions of people each year, is seemingly out of control in Brazil, which has seen cases of the potentially deadly virus increase 30-fold over the past 50 years. But now scientists from UK-based biotech firm Oxitec say they have a solution. Researcher Sofia Bastos Pinto and her team are genetically modifying millions of male mosquitoes, whose sole purpose is to kill their own kind until the entire population is wiped out.
What we do is release males into the environment so they can mate with the females. The sperm of our male enters the egg and transmits the gene to all of his descendants. The first line of descendants will inherit this gene and then will die.
These transgenic insects carry a gene programmed to kill their offspring before they reach maturity, meaning they will never reproduce. And if the insects can't reproduce, Bastos says the entire population dies out. In a recent trial, the process reduced a local population of dengue mosquitoes by 96%. Bastos and her team are now starting to produce the genetically modified mosquitoes at a lab in Campinas, Brazil. a town where 40,000 cases of dengue have already been reported just this year. Oxitec says that genetically modified bugs pose no risk to humans, and the process of releasing millions of them into the environment is safe. They are now awaiting government approval to start the process on a larger scale. Bastos says that may take some time.
We know we're in the process, but it's a new thing. It is the first transgenic insect in the world which will be approved to be used for commercial purposes, so it takes a while to be resolved.
Bastos says that if killer gene-carrying mosquitoes prove effective on a large scale combating dengue, they could also prove successful in tackling malaria and other vector-borne diseases.
Well, it will be interesting to see how that turns out. Karim Khaddad with you this hour at Al-Ittijah World News. Let's recap our headlines.
لأن لحظة الاحتفال قريبة.
Hamas's military wing threatens further attacks against Tel Aviv's international airport and announces the end of truce talks. Israeli attacks on Gaza kill at least 20 people, including the wife and child of a Hamas military commander. The U.S. president vows to continue fighting Islamic State militants in Iraq after the group beheaded an American journalist. And hundreds of thousands of Yemenis continue to rally in the capital Sana'a for the third straight day, demanding the government's ouster. Well, there you have it. Thanks a lot for watching and have a good night.